Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I hope that your weekend treated you well. Mine certainly did. Today's episode is brought to you by Black Rifle Coffee, the finest purveyors of brown water known to man. Now, I don't have any data or proof of that statement, but it's what I believe. And in 2022, you're not allowed to challenge my beliefs. So it is what I say it is. And if you like coffee, which at this point in my life, I don't know how I would survive without it, Black Rifle Coffee has everything you could possibly want, whether it be a coffee subscription, individual bags, ground or whole bean, apparel, cups, things to make coffee with, bundles of all of that, the ECS, which apparently stands for executive or exclusive coffee subscription. I consider it to be Evan's coffee subscription. It has everything that you could possibly need. Just go to blackriflecoffee.com. And not only will you be supporting a really cool brand, you're going to be supporting a brand that was founded by and still run by some pretty high-level veterans that I'm extremely fortunate to call my friends. But enough on the business side of the house. My guest today is a repeat guest. His name is Mickey Schuch. And I got to know him through jiu-jitsu, specifically through his coach, Dan Hart. I believe the first time I met him was at a Henry Aiken seminar at Dan's gym in Woodstock, Illinois, which, if you know where that is off the top of your head, good for you. I just basically know it's near Chicago. But I digress. Mickey was out here for a Dan Hart seminar in Kalispell, and right before the seminar, there was the shooting in Texas. Now, Mickey, his full-time job, he owns a company called Carry Trainer. And I love the taglines that he uses. The first one is Be Your Own Cavalry, a holistic approach to self-defense and firearm training. He lives in this world. Carry Trainer itself provides real solutions for real problems. It is incumbent upon individuals, businesses, and organizations to always protect and defend innocent life. These are the things that you're first going to see if you go to carrytrainer.com, in addition to a profile picture of Mickey's face, which is amazing. I'd say it's the Fibonacci sequence, but it's not. The only Fibonacci sequence that I've ever seen with a face is with Kool-Aid, who is a Frenchie. And again, I digress. We talked about, I wouldn't say all things just firearm related, but it certainly was based around that. And I wanted to have the conversation based on Mickey's background, what he sees professionally, the interactions that he has both in person and online. I think they are incredibly important conversations. And without further ado, why don't we get into episode number 237 with Mickey Schuch.
Okay, got the red smoke. Gun run, north and south, west of the smoke, west of the smoke. Okay, copy, west of the smoke. I'm looking at danger close now. Come on with it, baby, give it to me, I need it. You're cleared hot. Copy, cleared hot.
Do you want to start with the note that you have?
We could. So basically,
Actually, let me start. Let me start by interrupting you, my guest, with what I want to talk about.
it's your show.
I'm going to pull up your Instagram. I think the post that you and I are talking about was on your, it was Carry Trainer. I, first off, don't know how you live in the, I'm going to call it the gun space on the internet, because it is a combination of what I'm going to describe as a pig pen and a prison yard, especially when it gets, it's fucking wild.
Yeah.
The comments that people have about the gun space is unbelievable. And most of the time, I look at social media, I just don't want to take it that seriously, right? Like, it's just like, everybody calm down. Hey, you can rotate that thing towards you.
Perfect.
The screw's a little bit loose on that. I don't know why. I'm going to fix it later. You can even rotate.
that one.
Yeah, it's tough to get in there.
I'm not going to fuck with it.
So just make sure you talk into the mic. But
Like this.
so you made a post, and I almost reposted it because I was watching a video yesterday. I'll try to put a bow on all this. And I think this, God, it's so dumb to describe. It's so dumb to tell the truth about how I got to this headspace. I was on Facebook, and there was
your first problem.
I know. And I forget what I was doing. I'm sure I could come up with some sense of a reasonable reason to be on there, but I was probably fucking off wasting time. And it was an advertisement for a documentary. And I might be chopping this a little bit, but it essentially said, the title of the documentary is, What is a Woman? and this man is traveling
I
around.
saw this. Yeah.
And one of the clips was he was sitting down and he was talking with a college professor, and they were talking about the word truth. And because of, doing a podcast and the creative nature of editing, I don't know exactly what they were talking about right before that clip, and I don't know what they talked about after that. But the college professor negatively reacted in a terrible way to the word truth. He said that the word truth was very anti-transgender, and the person kept asking, well, and I think he might have used the term bigoted as well. And he kept asking, how is the word truth bigoted or anti-transgender? And the guy basically said, you're on thin ice and I'm getting ready to end this. So that got me thinking, I'm like, how the fuck can the word truth aggravate somebody to that degree? And then shortly after I read this post from you, and to put a bow on all of it, I really worry about people portraying themselves as a fountain of knowledge and people receiving the information that they put out and putting no other additional effort into understanding whether or not it's actually legitimate. And I have multiple examples. I'll start with our current president. Not that he's the only person that has said this, and I think you and I might have talked about this when he said, why don't police shoot people in the legs? I'm like, holy shit. That is actually a terrible idea to talk about, and it's even worse policy.
And he could have just grabbed any one of his Secret Service
A single
agents,
one.
any Capitol policeman, and just said, hey, is there like a reason we don't do that? And they would have been like, sure.
Then, recently, he started talking about banning 9mm pistols, which I have, you may know this because of your background, but I'm going to guess that is probably the most common pistol cartridge used in the U.S. I mean, obviously there's like 45 and all that stuff, but 9mm is everywhere. It's easy to source. Most of the Secret Service officers probably around Biden, absent their long gun, are probably carrying a 9mm.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you're the fucking president of the United States. And then you posted this. Like, this all came around, and then, of course, you're in town. I'm like, Mickey, we're doing this.
What were you wearing when all this happened?
Man. Negligee, likely. Tight-fitting. Like the pictures I send you.
Tell me it was green.
Sure. Then you made this post from NPR. The AR-15 is designed to blow targets apart. Its bullets travel with such velocity that they can decapitate an adult. And you have 268 comments on this post, of which I did a brief wavetop search, which confirmed for me my belief that everybody should have access to the internet, but it should really be throttled, whether it's dial-up or broadband. If you're a dum-dum, you have to use dial-up from the 1990s. You can still access the internet, but you need to be slower.
Can't have this stuff too quick.
Yeah. But again, for me, it all comes back to, like, people will read this and they will think that because it says NPR, which is, to many people, a very reputable news source.
Which, by the way, is funded by we the people. The federal government funds them.
Yep. It's got a check mark, right? So there's another level of legitimacy. For some reason, if you have a check mark on social media platforms, what you say carries more weight, which is idiotic because Kim Kardashian has a check mark, and I'm not taking advice from that woman. Unless perhaps it would be about the things that she's best at, but that's a different podcast, Mickey. We're not going to have that one. But it really worries me. And I stay out of the online. Like I said, you're a madman for playing in that prison yard / pig pen. But to me, that comment and truth, they're the polar opposites, but one is being portrayed as the other. And I think it makes things far worse. Like the situation, the gun violence, sucks. I don't want anybody to be killed on the working end of a firearm, and I don't want anybody to ever have to take anybody's life.
Killed for the wrong reason.
For sure. Well, to me, like even my police officer friends, I don't ever want them to have to come out of the holster and end somebody's life, and they don't want to either. But that statement about the AR-15 is so ridiculously untrue, and people are taking it as fact. Same thing with Biden talking about why don't we shoot people in the legs, and we need to ban 9mm. I think we've really lost track of what truth is, and I don't understand why people want to pretend to talk about things that they obviously don't know anything about. Like, I know how to use a gun. I understand how most guns function at a broad level. I spent a lot of time with AR type platforms, 5.56 or 2.23, however people would want to describe it. But I'm not an expert on the Constitution. I'm not an expert on the Second Amendment. I have no interest in spending hours and days and weeks discussing what the founding fathers meant. I'm not an expert on gun laws, and I have no problem saying that. I don't know how that post makes it to the post, like somebody actually hits post on that thing.
They said this is good to go. We've checked her out.
How does that happen?
You know what's interesting? So we have the access to the internet. We've got libraries in every town, or one the next town over. The stuff is there. Let's take the Second Amendment. What's amazing is, so it's just a couple lines. You could go to a college in any town USA and find a professor of the Constitution or law, and you will find them arguing over what the intent of the framer founders were at said time. And almost without a doubt, anti-gun agendas read the words in modern vernacular, and there becomes the biggest problem. So whenever I have this discussion, I think, what was the intent of the founders? What was the intent? I know they're kind of switching gears from your point, but I'll bring it full circle. It seems like too many people, COVID is a perfect example. I have a dozen friends that are doctors, ER, ICU level doctors. We've got a friend at our gym you've met that's in the business of validating vaccines. And I don't want to talk about vaccines, but how many people all of a sudden became chemists and frickin' biologists over the last 2 years?
I can only speak for myself, but I have advanced degrees in all of those based off my Googling.
Sure. Now the interesting thing is, though, I think if somebody's ever, I think a good parallel is if somebody ever had a loved one get a terminal illness, you develop a deep level of understanding on all the different things that go along with it, where you can have the conversation with a doctor or scientist in the field because you did all the reading and research and asked all the questions. So I think we should be able to develop, we the people should be able to develop that level of understanding about the Constitution, which is not that broad a document. And really what the founders did is they tried to make it so plain to understand that posterity, us, would look back and say, okay, I understood what Jefferson meant here or Adams meant. And they wrote it in Old English law, literally knowing this is kind of timeless shit for hundreds of years. They didn't know that we were going to be sitting here doing this. But this.
Pull that mic closer to your mouth, Mickey. You have your own podcast.
I'm talking pretty loud. You want it like this? You want to hear my mustache on here?
You don't have to.
I just had a weird thought of how many other people's beards have touched this thing.
You don't have to touch the tip. You can keep it close.
Sorry.
Tease yourself with it. That should actually help you. Yeah. Knowing you, that was the proper cue.
I printed, well, not printed, but downloaded a little thing here. So I didn't even know this until today. President Taft. Did you know he was the only president that was also on the Supreme Court, but also the Supreme Court, the Chief Justice?
I had no idea.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Only person to do that. So he was pretty sharp. And he said, the framers of our Constitution were born and brought up in the atmosphere of the common law. They thought and spoke its vocabulary. They were familiar with other forms of government, recent and ancient. This is only 100 years ago, right? And this was indicated in their discussions, earnest study and consideration by many of them. But when they came to put their conclusions into the form of fundamental law in a compact draft, i.e. the Constitution, they expressed themselves in terms of the common law, confident that they could be shortly and easily understood. He continues later in another writing, the language of the Constitution cannot be interpreted safely except by reference to the common law and to the British institutions as they were when the instrument was framed and adopted. I'm going to read one more. Jefferson, he was talking about the interpretation of the Constitution. And Jefferson said, on every question of construction, let us carry ourselves back to the time when the Constitution was adopted. Recollect the spirit manifested in the debates, and instead of trying what meaning can be squeezed out of the text or invented against it, conform to the probable which was passed. And there's so many. I've got another piece I might read if we get to it. We have all these folks. Let's just talk pro-gun. You called it, what did you call it, a prison yard?
Prison yard / pig pen. And what I meant, though, was the comment section of the internet.
I get it. So just like I think COVID's a good analogy because we're passionate about it. You're fucking with my rights. You're fucking with my freedom, my ability to do whatever. And so you get heated, and then nobody really makes good decisions by being heated. Most of the time, you don't make good choices. So you say and do dumb shit. I posted something the very next day, just as an example for your listener viewers. It was a 12-year-old boy that went into a Michigan gas station or grocery store and fires around in the air and robs the place. Somebody wrote, I'd have to read it exactly to quote it, but basically, I wish I was there because I would have introduced that kid to room temperature, meaning shoot him and drop his body temperature from 98.6 to whatever the room was. And
Such a tough guy comment.
But it was like he's
so tough.
He wrote, I think he used the word pleasure. Nothing would give me more pleasure. And I go, like, nothing would give you more pleasure than to shoot a fucking 12-year-old child and kill them?
Yeah.
Like, I get it. This kid did something that is putting other people's lives on the line, but like, you want to kill a 12-year-old because they're stealing $50. And I don't
think they actually want to. I think what they want to do is make a comment like that on the internet because they have absolutely no understanding of the gravity involved of actually lining the sights up on somebody and squeezing the trigger.
And killing them.
Because to add on to the end of that story, that idiot kid who I don't know anything about his life.
I did a little backstory on him.
But he got caught 30 minutes later. Mm-hmm. So it's like, you're telling me. So I did watch that video and you could tell it was weird. He actually was pretty casual, fired the round off. It looked like he jacked the slide for some reason and then was like.
It was weird.
It was weird. But, and I actually put myself, and I thought about that too. I was like, what would I do if I was in that situation? That's the thought process I had. He was there because there was somebody standing off to like his 3 o'clock. And I'm not recommending that anybody ever approach somebody with a gun or grab it. The choices that I may choose to make are mine based off of my own experiences. But the last thing that I would want to do would be to shoot that kid.
Yeah.
He obviously was making poor choices. Super dangerous because he did have a loaded gun. The fucking office pop into the ceiling is a questionable. First off, kid, let's think about your hearing, all right? For a variety of reasons, that's a shitty idea.
But that brings up a whole bunch of other comments. People commenting like he's got poor gun handling. And
he's 12.
He's a 12-year-old robbing a gas station.
Yes.
Why are we looking at it like from that perspective? Like, and I don't think, so nobody thinks, I'm not diminishing that this kid committed a egregious offense.
Yep.
But
and he's in custody and he's been charged with felonies, and that's absolutely the way that should go. I hope that at some point in time he could turn his life around because obviously something is not going well. There are already people who, and not only are there I'd fucking smoke that dude. Then there's the conspiracy crowd. Looks like it was a setup. I believe that's our government agents sending him in there to do that.
There's a whole bunch of those too. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of those.
How the hell did we arrive at this place?
Well, so truth. There's something wrong with truth. I think all of us have either met or had a thought. We were talking about flat Earth the other night, as we were screwing around. And the fact that, like, you've been in airplanes.
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of can see the fucking curve of the
You really can.
That's, there's like a parabolic reflector or some shit that they put up there. The fact that, like, science, you use the word science. I've got a family member and I say, well, like the science, and this family member will go, allegedly. Like, that's just the automatic response. And I'm like, no, but science means that we have a way to measure and recreate an experiment to validate, allegedly. Like, it's just this complete disregard.
A lot of our society is based on that science.
Yeah.
It's based on that understanding.
Like flight.
It often makes me wonder, I wonder if the people who will, and I'm not saying that science isn't flawed, and there are certainly people who are very dogmatic, especially if they really focus on one area, and I think they can develop some blind spots. And, let's look at the medical practice 300 years ago, when if you had a headache,
1,000%.
they're going to drill a hole in your head. It can advance, and it should.
This could hurt. Hold still.
I feel like you have too much pressure in your head. Let's let some of that out. Like, so it can obviously advance. And I think as long as you are open to innovation and evolution I'm not talking evolution, the big picture, just the the marching forward of whatever discipline you're in, that's great. And I always wonder when people, like Flat Earth being a good example, or anybody who will say, oh shit, it was Joe Rogan had on, well, I listened to it yesterday. He had on, I'm probably going to mess this up, I believe she is calling herself Kristen Beck now, ex-SEAL, transgender.
Oh yeah, I've seen this.
I'm pretty sure that she said, I don't believe in gravity, I believe in buoyancy. And the comment she made was that they don't have an explanation for why gravity exists, which I am pretty fucking sure with a Google search that is 100% incorrect. And so again, how does somebody land in that headspace? Do they have something happen in their life that they become deeply distrustful of anybody who is in a position of perceived power or authority? Like, I don't get it. How do you get to that place where when people say the word science, you go, allegedly?
I don't know.
How do you get there?
I've always wanted to know. Whatever the thing is, I want to know. I don't, and not like I got to understand everything, but like I was a carpenter for years. As a kid, uncles would give me like old books of post and beam framing written in 1830, and I'd pour through them, and I understood like what the shit meant when I was out on the job site. I didn't want to be the dummy that didn't understand stuff. Like, I don't get why people want to have arguments about COVID or about the way that our Constitution works, but then not develop some level of understanding of what our founders intended. And then also understand the whole Bill of Rights is amendments to the Constitution. None of it existed when the Constitution was written, and they later created this amendments. Like, if we amend a contract, it means we're adding something.
Yeah.
The cool thing is...
I mean, the Bill of Rights is the first 10, right? The first 10 amendments.
They were smart enough that there's only 17 of them after all these couple 100+ years. Like, I think, what do we need? 2/3 of Congress and 3/4 of the state, I believe, to ratify a change. Yeah. And there's one other way, but you can Google that. But it's very hard. They wanted to make it where it wasn't easy to do. And even that, to do that, it's been done, like the Volstead Act, the repeal of the Volstead Act, the prohibition. We made alcohol go away, or women being able to vote, or the freeing of the slaves. Like, it's pretty cool that we can change things, but for some reason we have this weird idea that they drew this map up in 1788, 1789, and then didn't want it to change ever. Well, wait a second. Of course they did. They literally created a path to change. It just requires people to work and figure shit out, and they wanted people like us today to have a world that we wanted to live in. I believe it was it was Jefferson. They all talked about this, but one of them was very specific and said something to the effect, I'm broadly paraphrasing, how dare we craft a government that in the future forces people to live how we saw fit today. And it's a very loose paraphrase, but they had enough forethought to understand, like, we're trying to do our thing that liberty is now. And it's pretty cool that we can change it, because now you can't own people like they thought was okay and shit like that. Like, we were allowed to walk our own line. I think people are fucking lazy and don't want to spend some time to actually read. And then even reading, you got to be careful. Like, with this echo chamber that social media is, the AR blows heads off. All right. Is there any actual evidence of that? Like,
I mean, here's what I'll say on that. And I hesitate to make this comment because it could probably be taken the wrong way, but I've killed more people with a 5.56 or 2.23 round than almost anybody walking the face of the earth.
That's probably a lot of people.
Well, no, but here's the thing. It doesn't mean that I've killed a lot of people. It means that almost nobody actually does. You know, like if you are in a home invasion situation and you kill somebody with an AR platform rifle that shoots that round, you'll probably never meet anybody else in your life other than on social media that, like, it's so anomalous. Mm-hmm. And it was the main round for a very long time in my old occupation. So I either was engaged in that or I saw the aftermath of it. Mm-hmm. I have never seen a 5.56 round decapitate somebody.
Sure.
And it's not like they fly at a rate that is so much greater or lower than a 7.62 or even a 300 Win Mag. I've never watched a 300 Win Mag decapitate somebody.
Sure.
Can it change the shape of somebody? Oh, fuck yes. But people, again, you got to be careful with what you read. People will read that from NPR and take it as gospel, and it feeds into the environment that we are in right now, which is why when I heard that you were coming, I was like, fuck, man, we got to sit down and talk about this, because this is your occupation. You work in this world. You train people with firearms. You are intentionally cannonballing into this shit all the time. And I'm like, God damn.
It is rough at times. I think that while I'm teaching people how to use the guns, my greater cause is helping people understand, I say, to protect, promote, and proliferate our liberty. And you did that in your job in a different capacity. So we always say knowledge is power, right? I think that's bullshit. People have said, so this is not me, but applied knowledge is power.
I was going to say, you could have all the inside spit, but if you're unwilling to get off your sofa, who cares?
And do something with it, right?
Yeah.
It's like gasoline in a can. You got to use it for something. And so this stuff is out there, and it's not even hard to develop and digest some understanding of it. And what I mean by that is understand the founders' intent when they drafted the Bill of Rights. Understand that they were imperfect men. Probably once a year I kind of go through, there's 56 signers. And there's a bunch of books, and just like I'll listen to a few books on audio, like Audible or something, or read a book on one of the founders every couple months. And they were sinners, drunkards.
They were human.
Yeah, they were people. But they were also passionate about liberty, caring, willing to give up 5, 10, 15, 30 years of their life for the cause of our republic, knowing that they'd never fucking get paid back for it and die broken. But we latch onto these ideas. Shall not be infringed means this certain thing, or regulated. Regulated means... well, what does it mean? Well, to us in this modern vernacular, regulated means to have some laws that govern it, right, or rules. You've probably heard this discussion. Regulated at that time meant something completely different. It meant well fucking trained. So when I hear people argue this, Second Amendment guys arguing it, I go, well, are you well trained? Are you ready that if your nation needs you to take up arms against the Russians or China or the aliens, like, do you have the skill set, or are you just some dumb fuck with a ammo can and a AR all spray painted up that gets your dick hard for having this stuff?
And your Opticon backwards?
Yeah, right. And I'm not digging on people, but like on one side, people want to have this attachment to, they wanted us to have these things. Okay, so you're into the idea of the Bill of Rights. So, but then you don't like certain free speech things. You don't think somebody should be able to say stupid shit online. Yeah. You don't like that, but you like this other thing. Like you can't have one without the other.
Yeah, to my understanding, the Bill of Rights and Constitution, it's not really a buffet line. You don't get to pick and choose. Mm-hmm. Like I'm a crab Louie guy, and you like blueberry pancakes. It's like we can all sit in the table. Another one, coming back to truth. And people fuck this up because I don't think they have an understanding of our past. Biden would say the Second Amendment has limits. When it was written, you couldn't just go out and buy a cannon. It's like, dude, actually you could. Yeah. And you can still buy a fucking cannon today, you can. By the way.
Yeah, you can.
But again, the President of the United States says this. He has a baseline of people, and I don't care if it's Biden or whoever comes next or whoever was before, they have a foundation of people that what comes out of their mouth is gospel. And they're irresponsible with the information that they put out. So again, this relationship with the truth gets lost. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to diminish any of the gun violence or the consequences that come from that. But the lack of being able to have a conversation that is founded in truth, I think makes it impossible to actually do anything that could maybe potentially, hopefully, help in that arena.
I got a message yesterday on that post that you're talking about.
The NPR one?
Yeah, because I said something in there about rights and limits, and somebody wrote rights, limits, unfollowed. And
I always appreciate when people say unfollowed.
Yeah, thank you, because now
thanks for the heads up.
I can go write it on my marker board. Bob's gone. Yeah. Finally pissed that guy off. Rights do have limits, though, right? So, and And you could go to any lawyer in America and ask them what happens if I have this gun, if I go use it and I shoot my neighbor in the face for no reason. Well, now you just found the limit of your right.
Yeah. Same with speech.
Yeah.
Freedom of speech and freedom of consequences are very, very different things.
Very famous, it's repeated often, right? The Supreme Court justice said you can't yell fire in a theater. Well, I actually can. I could sit next to you and I can say, fire, fire, fire. I love fire. I love firefighting. I love firecrackers, right? I can whisper that to you.
Bombardier.
Right. But until you utilize it for something improper, knowing usually or negligently creating a situation, just like I could put a newspaper ad or write something in the newspaper that says Andy Stumpf does something inappropriate, blah, blah, blah. If I am doing that to cause you harm, now all of a sudden that is no longer free speech and it becomes slander and libel and all that shit.
You still have the right to say it.
Yeah.
It just doesn't detach you from what may come from it.
Yeah. I mean, basic civics, our government only exists to protect our natural rights. I mean, that's like, I think we forget sometimes, like they're one of the largest employers on the planet, federal government, right? They only exist to protect our natural rights. And
do you think most government employees have that same headspace?
I don't. But on the flip side, though, we the people have to live in a manner that we keep the government in check, understand how it's supposed to work, and then we all want stuff. FDR created a new Bill of Rights that said you have a right to a good job, you have a right to a warm bed. Well, you don't. I mean, you do, because now we the people say, okay, this is stuff. You have a right to an education that you don't have to pay for. You have a right to. The pursuit of happiness meant you chase it. You go fucking figure out how to get the warm bed. You figure out how to pay for the college. You figure out.
It wasn't a list of things that would be provided.
Yeah, it wasn't. But again, so we the people, though, since FDR said, you know what, the Great Depression sucked. I kind of like this concept that there's this net. So our debt has gone like this since that time because we've decided all of these other things should be handed out. I only bring all that up because it's just, and I'm not a scholar, right? I'm a carpenter. I shoot guns. I tell dick jokes. If I can figure this shit out through casual reading at night on my couch over the last 15, 20 years, anybody can. And I think it's, even if you find it boring, you should at least appreciate it. I find reading the rules of the road boring, but I don't like getting pulled over for not understanding the rules of the road. I think there's a lot of shit that's boring, but you should understand it. And too many people, both sides, but let's talk about gun second. Like people say to me, like, dude, I'm Second Amendment. Like, oh, you're a sentence on a page. Like, what does that mean? Like, it's like become like a verb. Like I Second Amendment hard, bro. Have you
ever seen like an Eighth Amendment bumper sticker?
No.
Which I don't off the top of my head know what it is.
I don't know what it is either. I always ask lawyers to see if they know, and they're like not Eighth, but like any of them, and they're just like, I have no fucking idea.
That would be sweet though to have it's like Punisher skull, but like Eighth Amendment.
Right.
Come get it.
Right.
It's probably like, yeah, well, look it up. It's probably the one where you have like a right to a jury trial if it's over like $200 or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Let's see. Eighth. Where we at? Oh, great. Now I get the Roman numerals. Excessive bail shall not be required. There's a good one in here. What's the one?
There is one where you can demand a jury of your peers if it's over a certain dollar amount, I believe.
Yeah. There's a few good ones. But you're right. It's like we fixate on that one because it's attached to this toy.
Yeah.
That we love the toy. And of course, some people will hear me and they'll say, fuck that. It's about the suppression of tyranny. Of course, I agree with that. But then if you also care about the suppression of liberty, are you also equally invested in who runs for city council in your neighborhood? Because that city councilman's going to end up becoming a congressman, and that congressman's going to end up becoming president, and it's all connected.
Yeah.
And these kids shooting up gas stations, that 12-year-old, what I read, so I don't have the facts in great detail, but apparently his parents passed away. He was living with a family member, totally rough life. None of it's an excuse, but are we paying attention to our kids? This fucking asshole that in Buffalo, New York, or this asshole in Texas. people say, oh, that's not the parents' fault. Well, my parents were good people. I did some bad shit. I didn't murder people and do stuff like that, but I did some shoplifting. I did some, sinful acts as a young man. So, of course, parents aren't responsible for everything, but this is another argument. How does a 12-year-old get a gun? Well, so somebody argues with me on that.
I think he took it out of a locked gun safe that he knew the combo to.
So there you go. So how did the kid get the combo? Like at some point, everything always comes back to somebody made a mistake, right? Yeah. Like when you fly, everything's a checklist. And when there's a failure, where did we fuck up? Did the mechanic fuck up and didn't tighten the thing? Or was it not a fresh part or whatever? Fuel had water in it. Or you're parachuting. I'm sure you do checklists, and when something's fucked up, so there's always, okay, mom and dad didn't change the code. And people hear this and they get a visceral response. I get messages or emails of people saying, I shouldn't have to lock my shit up. Well, sure. I mean, I know 10-year-olds that have died of terminal illnesses. That shouldn't have to happen either, but stupid shit happens. And if we are... And I'm not some advocate for every gun being locked up, but I think just as a very pragmatic concept, if any firearm is outside of our direct care and custody, it should be locked up or in some manner made to be unused by unauthorized hands, be it a 2-year-old or a 40-year-old murderer.
I think I brought this up. I did a Friday episode where I was talking about the shooting a little bit, more from the perspective of the police response. And largely what I said largely what I said was, one, I always hesitate to talk about it until the investigation comes out because the first things recorded are most often the least accurate. But two, I think that the safe storage of weapons, whether you're a pro-gun person or an anti-gun person, it's one of those where I think both sides should agree. Like if you're passionate about guns, awesome. Hopefully you understand what they're designed for, what they can do. And if you hate guns and think that they're super dangerous, you'll probably think that if they're not in direct control or possession, they should be stored somewhere safely. It's not that fucking hard. And safes are not that expensive, and they have like biometric ones that can open in a heartbeat. And then you don't have to worry about a code because you can put a fingerprint on there that's not going to be, unless you live with some 12-year-old that's like, Mission Impossible 18. Yeah. That one to me, I don't understand why people argue against that.
I think it's like a don't tell me how to be.
I can understand that.
And I dig that too. I'm not saying make a law about it. So there's plenty of states that have safe storage laws. There's countries, Canada, other countries that have safe storage laws. I'm not suggesting we make it a law. Laws only exist because people don't have fucking manners. Like we only have speeding limits because people can't stop crashing into shit. We only have drunk driving laws because people don't know that 1 or 2 beers isn't the point that they can't control their car. We only have any law because people can't fucking be cool. Yeah. I pulled pocket knife out just because that made me think like, it's like we wouldn't take this and just like put this where there's kids. That's stupid. They could cut themselves.
Throw it up in the air.
Right. But for some reason, people will put their loaded pistol in the purse and leave it there. You just get so comfortable and complacent with certain behaviors, the shotgun in the corner or the thing in the closet, and they get complacent with it. And the attitude, again, flying is a perfect thing just because it's never happened. Like, I've never had this flat spin, blah, blah, but you still train for it, right? And people look at these scenarios and they say, it's never, ever happened. My kids have never done it until they do. Until their friend comes over.
That's the one that freaks me out. Like my own kids have been around guns for a very long period of time. And any time that they have ever wanted to see a gun, I am receptive to that because I don't want it to be something that is enticing to them when I'm not around. Oh, dad's not around. Let's see if we can find his shit. It's like, no. If you have a question about a gun, I'll answer. If you want to touch a gun, we can touch guns, but we're going to go through everything. Like, how do you treat a gun? Like it's loaded at all times. You never put your finger on the trigger. Careful what you point it at. When you pick up a gun, first thing you're going to do is going to make sure that it's unloaded. And you're still going to treat it like it's loaded. And we have this conversation, and then it's like, you know what? Cool. Like, if you want to mess around with this thing, because I don't want it to be something that has this
taboo.
Mystique.
Yeah.
So my kids, I feel safe with my kids around firearms. Not like I'm going to be like, hey, dude, put this under your pillow at night. But if they were to encounter a gun at the house, I don't feel like that they would mess with it. If they did want to touch it, I know that they would know the steps that they would need to take to be safe, but I don't have a fucking clue what any of their friends would do.
Sure.
And that's a huge concern to me. And I have guns at my house, but I have biometric safes.
Yeah.
You know, and there are people.
And everybody's different too. You got no kids, you live alone.
Totally different story.
But your house can be burglarized.
For sure.
And people argue, if my house is burglarized, this is the part where we start to have this disconnect of my rights versus my role in a community and my role in a nation, where people say, and I agree, if you come into my home unwelcome and steal my shit, that's a crime. And for some reason in people's heads, like, well, I shouldn't have to worry about that. I shouldn't have to either, but people fucking steal guns every single day.
Yeah.
And I don't want to make the conversation all about just the safe storage of guns, but I think it's telling when you look at how people feel about it. It's telling of like what's in the heart of the, I don't want to say average, because I guess I can't speak for every gun owner, but a large cross section of Second Amendment people. And I'll piss people off with these conversations, and that's not my intention. I would love if you thought through a good example or a good thought process. Shit, if I've got this thing here, this thing can hurt people, and how would I feel if my wife called me or the police called me and told me my thing was found and kids were dead? I'd feel really shitty.
Yeah. I
have a great story. A friend of mine, copper in one of the largest police departments in the country, no longer works there. He was let go because he got a call one day. He works for another major city. He got a call one day. Hey, can you come into the office? Sure, it's my day off. Let me come in. Drives into the office, gets there, and they're like, can you sit down? Cuffed him up. What the fuck? What happened?
Not an awesome beginning to a meeting.
No, and he's like, what's going on? And he's a cop, not stupid. He's like, I need a lawyer. Like, what is going on here? Rattling his brain. And they're like, we just found this, and it was at the scene of a crime where a police officer was shot. It's his gun. And he's like, what the fuck?
His service weapon?
Well, he's looking at it. He's like, that is my gun. It's at home in the closet at my parents' house. Like, it's the first pistol I bought when I was 22 years old. I'm in my 30s now. And he's like, Sarge or whoever, he's like, I haven't even touched that gun in 10 years. What the fuck's going on? Like, they ran it through the database. And what they found out, so his cop gets him shot. What they found out after like a couple days of doing some digging, his parents, he's got the gun in his like family bedroom at the house he grew up in, like up in the closet. Family's got the cable guy there. Cable guy steals it, sells it in like another town on the street. It was, when he saw it, his intention was to sell it on the street. So the guy that used it, they tracked all the way back to this cable guy, and the cable guy admitted it. Yeah, I fucking stole it like 9 years ago out of this house in such and such town. But just something like that, and this cop didn't die, but he almost did. Just having that locked up or hidden, and bad things happen. I'm not on a mission to get everybody to lock their guns up, but just something that stupid that it ended where it could have changed the life of a family forever. The guy was fucked up. He got a bullet put through him. Yeah. But it's something as simple as, like you said, you can go to a hardware store and buy a $50 little safe.
It's a solvable problem, and the barrier to entry is really low.
Yeah, it's not huge. I think just, that we kind of got on this topic because we're talking about people's mindsets, and I think those things, kind of like your point about the prison yard stuff, it's like we're dancing around the actual real issue. It's not gun storage. It's not president being truthful. It's like, why are we not demanding more from ourselves? I find our government to be disgusting in a million ways, and I personally feel responsible for it. I can't fix everything. I can't fix the things here in your town. That's not my responsibility, but in my town it is. And of course, I'm not going to bed at night like beating myself like you didn't fix, you didn't fix that stupid city council problem.
Right before you go to bed, you look into the mirror and you're like, you suck.
Yeah, exactly. But at the very least, like if you and I were neighbors and we hated sheriff in town because he was didn't do a good job stopping crime. I guarantee that by the next election, we could have a new sheriff in. Not just because you're Andy Stump or I'm Mickey, but like just if we were two regular dudes, we could find a guy to run for sheriff and help them get elected. And it might cost us 100 hours of our life and a couple bucks. And we could do it. Like, why do people not care? I bring all that up because it goes right back to the truth thing. I don't think we have like a connection anymore. The founders looked at these colonies and were like you swore an oath, I'm going to go do whatever the Navy and government and president wants me to do. I've talked to many servicemen, I don't know about you, that said I didn't fucking swear that oath for anybody but me to go have fun and get a college education. And that's just
interesting.
That's just them being honest.
Yeah.
But other guys have told me I 100% saw those towers fall or some other thing happen in life, and I knew this is what I wanted to do. And why does an American today, not even being a service person, not say, what the fuck can I do to keep this place intact for my kids or my grandkids? It's very bizarre to me.
Because that's harder than making a hollow statement on the internet.
Fair enough.
And obviously it doesn't apply to everybody, but broadly I think it's pretty accurate. It's super easy to comment and try to tear other people down, and it could probably be exhausting and a never-ending process to build something up on your own.
Mm-hmm.
Do you, the last few weeks there's been a rash of very public shootings from the Buffalo was
a month ago, 3 weeks
that
ago?
was a grocery store, correct?
Yeah.
Fuck, insane. I actually saw the raw video of that. Not awesome.
Horrible.
Yeah, not awesome.
There's probably combat.
Yeah, and he was trying to live out his first-person shooter life for sure, which is beyond me. Texas. I still, when I think about that, I mentioned this on that Friday episode. I cannot figure out how you land at a headspace where I'm going to go to an elementary school and shoot. I don't understand that. There has to be some break from reality. That's the only thing I can think of that even remotely makes sense. To me, I don't care how pissed I was at somebody or something or the world or that's not even on the fucking menu of options. I'd rather off myself before offing a bunch of fucking kids. I just don't get that. But it is something that happens in this country, and I think a lot of other countries look at us. Some specific examples, Australia changed course on their gun laws. Canada has changed course on their gun laws. And I'm not here to say that either of those are better or for worse, but a lot of other countries or people from other countries will say, why can't you stop this? Mm-hmm. Do you think it is possible to stop?
It's an interesting... I think, let's go to one point. Do you remember William April, Paul Sharp's friend, my friend? Did you ever hear Paul talk about Dr. April?
I don't think so.
So the ShivWorks guys, Paul Sharp, you know very well.
Mm-hmm. 2.0. Let's be clear who we're talking
2.0.
about. Yes.
Paul Sharp 2.0.
Is he going to be 3.0 next year? What's with this numbering?
I hope there's halves or quarters in there, 2.75 or
I rate him
shit.
as Paul Sharp 0.73.
William was a psychologist that studied criminals. He worked with the ShivWorks group, so Cecil,
which is a Blade training organization.
Well, not just Blades, but all kinds of combatives. So Paul, Cecil Birch, Craig Douglas, Chris Fry, and William and Larry Lindemann all have deep backgrounds in the combatives world, law enforcement. Some of them were, one of them was a state policeman, one of them was a narc cop. So great group. William has since passed away, awesome human being. Many of his writings and lots of podcasts are still out there. He talked about in one of his programs that he would travel around the country and talk about, the synopsis was, they aren't like you. And he's talking about people that shoot up a school or people that skin another human being or just shit that we can't wrap our head around.
I hope they're not like me.
Well, the reason that he was so involved in this discussion was our reaction or our responses are based on what would I do. So we pick a jury. What are we looking for? A sane, rational person from a cross-section of society. because that's what a sane, rational person is. That we want a sane, rational person to be able to look and objectively make good choices on whatever the facts are. We make decisions on why did the kid go shoot a school up, and we think about it through the optics of our brain that sees we don't hurt kids, and we try to clean up trash in the parking lot, and we pay our taxes, and blah blah blah. We can't fucking fathom it. And then our response can't be, hey, little buddy, like, what's going on? Like, and that is kind of how we have framed the truth of our prison system's overpopulated with people that have been locked up for smoking weed. Yeah. And then I've got cop friends across the country. And if any of your listeners, I'm sure you talk to a cop in your town and say, hey, how often do you arrest some shithead for something violent or something that they should be in prison for a little bit, and you connect them a week later to
frequent flyers.
Constant. I mean, and then what do the cops want to do? They don't want to have to go put hands on these people over and over, subjecting themselves to possibility of damage or some kind of civil, garbage in court with the family. So we, the people, are doing this. We elect the state's attorneys, or whatever they're called in your community. We elect the judges, or the people that appoint the judges. We craft the laws. And so, like, especially in this community, everybody says, oh, they just let them out. They just let them out. Well, they let them out because you elected the person. And then the response is, I didn't elect them. Well, either through your vote or your lack of work through the election process, apathy really, or laziness, these shitheads get onto the ballot and get in. And that's the cool thing about our country. Like, if people want that person in the office, and you look at, I don't want to make it all about voting, but you look at how many people actually go out and vote. It's just very telling, I think, to your point of it's easy. Yeah. It's easy to just not do anything. Knowledge, I believe, on these topics, what did the founders intend, and understanding bad people exist, and understanding, I don't think we need more guns or less guns. I think we need to have a better relationship with guns. I have a firearm on me right now. I travel with one. I use them. I teach people how to use them. I also have a great respect for the fact that if I do something erroneous with it, or out of malice or spite, I will probably alter the course of events, not only for my life, but my family's and whoever I use the firearm against. Instead of like the flippant things like I change, introduce them to room temperature, like these kinds of thoughts, to the knowledge of, when I was young, I was the only guy in my family that had firearms. My dad was a city kid. We grew up in the country. I got an 870 when I was, 13. My parents trusted me with it. I went to the hunter safety program, and it was locked up. I was very careful with it. My parents had 11 kids because the biggest thing besides somebody getting hurt was if something inappropriate happened, it would be taken away from me, right? So it wasn't like I just had access to it to do whatever I wanted, but it would be locked up and I could go out and throw clay pigeons or go hunting with it. When I got it, I got a brick, a big cinder block, and a pumpkin, and just a bunch of random shit like that, and some slugs and some buckshot. Check it out. So I'm the oldest boy, family of 11. I got 2 older sisters, and I grabbed my little brothers. We're all sitting there with frickin', just hodgepodge of things protecting our ears. And I blew up the cinder block with like a big Brennecke solid copper slug. And I blew up the pumpkin. Well, they were like mind blown, right? And I'm like, that's what this fucking thing will do, Yeah. And they all got to shoot it, and all my brothers are shooters now, and like some of them went to the Army, Coast Guard, etc. But like, this thing will fuck you up, and that was your chest or your head, and and even me, like, fuck, look what it did to that brick. Like, I never shot a brick with a slug before. That's crazy. You get what I'm saying, though. But that's knowledge. Like, I now understand that this thing's got like power, that if I wield it incorrectly, bad things will happen. And I think we're too flippant about stuff. I mean, just like vehicles are a perfect example. When I'm in my classes, I talk with the students about being relaxed when they shouldn't be, like in inappropriate times. Today, when we were at the gym and you were sitting on that dude's chest, having your way with him, it was funny. It was horrible. It was horrible.
No, it was fine.
For him, it was horrible. But like, that's you were relaxed because you knew what you could do and couldn't do. He should not have been relaxed. He should have been working really hard to get out of that position. And I think too often we're comfortable with things we shouldn't be. For example, everybody that is listening or watching has probably, well, not everybody, but if you drive a car, you've probably texted while driving. And I say this to students, and I'm like, just us, don't lie. You know, if any, and nobody ever raises their hand, like, no, I don't. So there's a perfect example of doing something hyper fucking dangerous while giving your attention to something else, and you do it because you're comfortable, because you've never had a bad outcome. Except the one time that you almost rear end somebody or almost whack a mailbox, what do? You go and you whip it down on the floor.
But that lasts for at least an hour.
You go, you know, like you look at it like it fucking burns you. It lasts till the next fucking stoplight, and you're down there, right? You're down there. Am I wrong?
Totally.
And that's just like we get complacent. My buddy Z, fifth group guy, tells a story to students, and I think these are just like illustrating like where I'm going. He's got a program. His kids are grown now, older, but when they were little, he'd come home with this gun, and he had a process, whatever it was, how he would stow the gun like at the house. Whatever it was, doesn't matter. And he comes home, does his thing, goes in the other room, and he got there, and he's like, did I just fucking do that? And he walks back in there and checks it because he was so on autopilot that he did exactly what he trained himself to do, but was so disconnected from it that, like, consciously, his system was working, but he was not conscious if he followed the system. And so now he, like, added to that. Like, I don't know if you ever, like, taught people, like, when they unload a gun, look away and look back, or you ever heard anybody do that? Like
in an administrative setting?
Yeah, just administrative. You know, lock the slide to the rear, cycle, lock the slide to the rear, visually, if needed, physically inspect the chamber, look away, you know, look back. Just
What's
to,
the
like,
look away doing?
Just that one thing of, like, rack, you know, it's good. And that you ever rack, and then look in a gun and there's still a fucking round jammed in the chamber?
I haven't had that experience yet, but
Never?
I know it happens. No.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely seen it happen, especially with...
It's just never happened to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
ARs, it happens all the time, especially as they're hot. But it's just to break that 1 second of complacency. Like,
so you can't rip through it and actually not be present in it?
Yeah, I'm not going through just rote movements. I'm consciously stop, breathe. This thing could fucking shoot a hole in my kid's face if somebody gets their hands on it. Okay, it's empty. Or fuck, I just had our last S12 event, had somebody, I watched them do it, and I was just happened to be giving them my attention. I saw no round come out, and they ran the slide forward, went back to the holster with an empty gun, and I was like, hey, pull your gun out. And he pulled it, racked, nothing happened. He locked the slide back, and I looked, and there was still a round in there. The ejector had ripped the brass.
Expended round or live?
It was a live round. It was the last one that got sent in there, and it was like a little chunk of dirt or something where there just wasn't enough pressure to rip it out, and he was freaked out. And I'm like, don't be freaked out. Like, you didn't do anything unsafe. It's in the holster. You didn't point it at your face and pull the trigger or something stupid. But, like, it was a good illustration for him. Like, systems matter. So full circle, I think we're too flippant about the whole thing. Like, the whole tyrannical government. So really, hot shot, you're going to go fight Andy's buddies that are coming to get you, like the tyrannical government, because they're the fucking law of our tyrannical government, right? You're going to go fight the guys from Ranger Regiment, really?
I don't think the guys from Ranger Regiment would have any interest in fighting.
But you get my point.
I do, yes. It's what I'll say is there's likely a skills and capabilities gap that would be impossible to overcome, regardless of the weapon that you may have.
Sure.
You know, it's I think that we can make an improvement on the gun violence in this country, but I think people are insane to think that the U.S. government is going to do it.
So that's the point I was driving at, like this. The fight of the tyranny, it's like people want to just, like, we don't want to deal with, like, steps of how we deal with it. We just want to go right to like, the let's fight government. Well, that's dumb. I've got a buddy that law enforcement always reminds people there has never yet been a time that a law enforcement community in this country, like, lost. Like, nobody is in the standoff, and finally the cops are like, fuck it, let's just go back to the station and eat donuts. Like, that never happens, ever. And of course, there's scenarios like Ruby Ridge. The guy lost 2 family members, and he was exonerated and paid some money, and he just died. Like, I'm not taking sides in that story, but you don't win when you lose your wife and kid.
For sure.
So, like, that's not happening. So why are we not developing this knowledge that back to these kids doing the shooting? That should never happen. Of course, it's going to, but I think access is a huge problem. This inflames people, but like what happened up in Kenosha, which is right near our house with Kyle Rittenhouse. And I talked about that in depth when it happened. The fact that folks look at that and get so visceral and immediately, I think people want to like identify like a young man out there doing the Lord's work, protecting the community from marauders. Cool, I get that. But then the other side of it, look at what happened in this heated situation. Not only does it become national news, not only does it become leverage in a debate that's slowly forcing the populace to want to change our Constitution, but it didn't have to be. And thank God nothing else happened. People looked at that, like in a million years, like, a Navy SEAL couldn't do what he did that night, or did he just get fucking really lucky that somebody didn't pitch a rock in the back of his head when he was running or hit him with a baseball bat? Because I know dudes that are baseball bat in the back of the head guys, and there's a little luck involved. I interviewed his head of security, came out and did an interview with us.
Who's head of security?
Rittenhouse.
He had a head of security?
Dude, he had a whole security. Deke still does, actually, because people want to kill this kid.
Who's paying for that?
Don't know. I asked that question, and it was the public poured money at him.
It's an anchor for some people.
Yeah.
I hear it often about Rittenhouse with my association with Black Rifle. One, just because I'm friends with Evan, and two, because
we talked about that a little bit.
Holy shit. I'm never buying another cup of coffee from Black Rifle until Evan apologizes to Kyle. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about?
And that's that same, so knowledge, truth.
Yeah.
The truth is what really happened. We actually have no connection to this person. They didn't even talk about pro or anti what he did or didn't do. They're just like, we didn't give him that shirt, or like, we're not, like, he's not a sponsored.
Which is the move that most of the people, I'm going to assume, if not all, who want to make those comments have never understood the position that Evan sits in as the CEO of a company that is that size.
Yeah, employs buku amounts of families.
Over 1,000 people at this point. And you're going to have to make a statement. I mean, the name of the company basically cuts it in half. Like, if people are going to support that brand or not. You're going to have to make a statement. And it's... that one comes up over and over again. That Rittenhouse situation is
schoolyard bullshit.
Yeah, it's an anchor in the ground for some people. I agree with you. The fact that it happened, the loss of life, and people are like, oh, well, those guys that he shot and killed, they were pieces of shit. I'm not going to disagree with that, but he didn't know that.
He didn't know it at the time.
Correct.
Yeah, that's basic law.
Yeah, I mean, afterwards, it's fascinating to me. As information comes out, when people find out about the background of a victim or an aggressor, it changes how they feel about it. It's like, but you're now judging the situation through a lens that is so much more elevated than the person that was in that situation. It's not how it works.
Yeah, they never had it.
Yeah, and how that's lost on them, I don't understand.
So the truth, that's where you started out here. People need to want truth, and then you got to decide too, like. We were just talking this weekend, right? I just like kind of doing what I'm doing, being able to travel around, do jujitsu, do some hunting, have fun, have some steak dinners with friends. Like, that's cool. I can't also become a doctor. I'm not Doogie Howser. That's a genius. I can't also...
That was a TV show, so that technically neither was he.
Okay. You get it. But we're this morning, when I pulled this up to have that written down, instantly I was bombarded by 100 emails, Facebook messages, Instagram messages, YouTube messages, and all that garbage. And I had to make a conscious choice. And like, my brother sent me a video that I was like, I'm going to watch this. Like, it's only 10 minutes. I had like an hour. I woke up an hour early, and I burned up 10 minutes of that hour just watching some meaningless piece of shit that had nothing to do with making my life better. But I chose to just give it up. And so we have to decide, like, what's important to me. Do I want to understand these things so I can articulate them, so I can have intelligent conversations, so I can stop my city council, my county board, my state government, my federal government from doing bad shit? Do I want to be able to eloquently speak about it, or do I want to just sound like a moron? And there also becomes the argument, I shouldn't have to sound anyway. Well, cool, man. Like, next time you go buy a house or a car or whatever it is you're buying, you also make judgments based on the way the person's talking to you, because we are selling our agenda, whatever it is. Everybody's got an agenda. And that Rittenhouse thing just was the prison yard thing, I think, is probably a great analogy. It's like when people are escaping and all the lights come on and it's like blinding. It's like all the cockroaches are coming around running, and you see all these idiotic. I sound so condescending because I know that these people care. I believe they do, but how can you not just take a step back and look and say, okay, here's this one bucket of information that the police department created. Here's this bucket of information that's on social media. Here's this bucket of information from the news reporters. And then here's the Constitution and the laws of Wisconsin, et cetera. Like, how do they all mix together? Like, why can't you do that? You can. You just choose not to. It's hard. It's hard, but it's not hard. It's time consuming at some point. That's what my point was.
Hard is like making big rocks into smaller rocks in the middle of midday sun.
Yeah. It's not complicated.
Yeah.
So your question about can we curb gun violence? I think it starts with people doing what you did with your kids. And then the flip side of that, loving them enough that they make good choices and not, the William April thing I brought up, you're going to have some broken toys that no matter what want to hurt people. Just like there's dogs that were the nicest dogs until they grab some kid by the face, and the people that love the whatever breed it is are like, don't judge them all, right? But then we say that dog's psycho, right? There's some dogs out there that are going to bite kids' faces for no good reason, and those ones we have a way to deal with. It's why we carry firearms and train combatives and do all those things. It's why Andy Stumps of the world are running around out there, right? But
like walking,
running. Just, let's go.
Why would you ever run when you can walk?
There you go.
That's my theory. Why run when you can just walk? Why walk when you can sit and be pushed by somebody else?
You're not like that. You're not like that at all. I just watched you work 8 hours the last 2 days. That's bullshit.
How would you go about changing people's relationship with firearms?
You know, I'm not a deeply religious man, but I think the religious communities look at this like it's a spiritual problem, right? Like the immediate response is people need God, they need some type of religious, and I don't want to take it down that road. I think we have to have some moral code, right? All of our laws are drafted on some metrics of right and wrong. Like, we agree you shouldn't go in your neighbor's house and steal his shit. We agree you shouldn't throw rocks at cars. We shouldn't shoot people. Like, whatever. That kind of stuff we agree. And then we disagree on certain things. Like, can you marry somebody that pees the same way as you? Can you have an abortion if you've got a baby that's this big versus this big? Like, those kinds of things, then it gets like murky on what we think right and wrong is. How I believe that this should change is if we begin to educate ourselves, because public education is just like laws, where the powers that be, which could be you in your community, says, I think people need to have a better understanding of music. So we're going to have a badass music program at our grade school and high school, because if you love art, you can express yourself, you're going to be happier. Like, that's what people honestly, how it works, right? We need to begin to educate people again on the history of this country, good, bad, right, and wrong. I have visited most of the 56 signers' graves in my life, and it's pretty moving. Like, the first time I saw Benjamin Franklin's grave, I sat there and I'm like, fuck, that's Benjamin Franklin. You know, he's right there in Philadelphia. Like, that's Benjamin Franklin right there. Like, the lightning, like every Franklin story you can think of, so many things that he did. And it, of course, his mortal remains laying in the ground don't change anything, but just sitting there and kind of like soaking that up, it made it more real. Like, this person that lived and died and did all kinds of cool shit and crazy shit. Like, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here talking to you. I wouldn't be in this place looking at his grave. I wouldn't be driving around teaching people to shoot guns if like this pile of bones didn't exist. So I think for me, it's like, it's in partial way, it's a level of honor.
Excuse me.
Gesundheit. Honor, like, I'll touch the stone and say, thank you, sir. You know, I don't know who the fuck these people are, but like, I would not be here. The same way I would say I've been to Arlington a handful of times, the same level of reverence I would have in that place. Different, but I feel, I mean, I could work myself up to tears if I just sat and kept on the thread I'm on, because like nothing that we have exists without liberty. Nothing. Not who you worship, not who you fuck, not what car you drive. There's plenty of countries in the world where vehicles are pretty well sorted out by government. There's plenty of countries where the radio, this kind of stuff, none of it exists. And we so take that for granted. I truly believe that we need to have a better appreciation of where we came from, which as a younger man, I would hear that. You got to know the history to know where you're going, blah, blah, blah. And it was just like, shut the fuck up. When's lunch? And you didn't want to hear it. But the deeper, I just was at Shiloh. I took my nephew to Shiloh battlefield. I was there as a 9 or 10-year-old with my dad. One of the bloodiest battles of the Civil War. Or if you ever visit Antietam or Gettysburg, there's fucking graves with hundreds of bodies that they lined up like cordwood and just pushed dirt on top of because there was not any other place to bury them. And there was just too many dead people. And why can we not think about that? I think we should. Memorial Day just happened. And I know veterans especially, they have different ways of... Some guys get angry when they hear me talk about it because, one, I'm not a veteran, but because they think, fuck you, people should be able to like remember or spend that day any way they wish. I'm not telling people what to do with Memorial Day, but the fact that we don't take our kids to a parade, then to a cemetery and watch the flag raise and hear taps and hear whatever stories being told in the park and like tell them, the only reason we're here doing this is because other people did shit from the founders to present day. That's the problem. We have no respect for the work of others. We have no respect for I call it the load of liberty. That's the way I see it in my brain. Somebody else put a backpack on, they had a wheelbarrow, and they fucking hump shit up hills. You drive out west, like out here, I'm out in the east, and you see the tunnels men hewed out of fucking rocks with pickaxes and shit. There was no crazy machines.
the boring machines.
Yeah, none of that existed. And just like raw freaking manpower did the stuff that now today we get to drive all over on interstates and do all the amazing, it's just, we take shit for granted. That's what it is.
I think that there would be a lot of beneficial things that would come if people took the time to focus some energy on the past. I have concerns with that in the same breath because I don't know if it's recently or maybe I heard it enough times that it started landing on my radar, hearing some people talking about how, the premise of America itself is flawed. The people who founded the country did so in their best interest, essentially broadly, and I'm paraphrasing probably like 15 different comments that I've heard, but those founders, those people who created this country, essentially set us up for failure because we weren't perfect. And that's a dangerous headspace for me because nobody's perfect. Mm-hmm. Like, what do you think about yourself if you're going to point your finger back? Like, slavery is a great example,
sure.
Right? Like, it is something that absolutely needs to be addressed. What a fucking catastrophic error. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm glad that I have not lived in a time in this country at least where it's like what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
It's like the most idiotic thing ever. However, I would also challenge people to find any country in the history of the world that doesn't have some experience with slavery, whether it's the building of the country, material, all that. I mean, it actually touches quite a bit. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean that the ideals that they were striving for were flawed because they either went along with or maybe they even agreed with something that was super fucked up at the time, right? Because we continued to evolve and we fixed it. I hear people just wanting to throw it all out, the baby with the bathwater, because of things like that. I mean, that's one example of many, and it's easy to point to.
I think that's a good one, though. We can't judge the optics of the people in history through the optics of today, just like your immediate, oh, I found out Andy Stump's a badass jiu-jitsu Navy SEAL, so I shot him. Well, you didn't know that till you looked him up. So the same thing. I
looked him up after I shot him, so I'm totally good.
I can't look back with everything we know now. And people say, of course you can. It's terrible to own people. Of course it is. But people at the same time also made everything that we have now, the Industrial Revolution, for example, was kids fucking working their fingers to the bone 12 hours a day. We grow. We learn new things. We understand to appreciate things different. So I don't look back with some reverence and say, oh, these guys were perfect. In fact, there's so much look out west here. I've got a friend that's part of the Lakota Nation in the Dakotas. We fucking ravaged the indigenous people of the Americas. But to your point, not to dismiss that sin behavior, so did every other country. It's humans. We fight for the best seat in the movie theater. We fight for the best seat on the bus. It's like that's what we do, and people, not to dismiss it. So I think my point in studying the history, I did say good, bad, right, and wrong, or something to that effect. One, you can parallel. I'm like these people. Benjamin Franklin. Not everybody's like Andy Stump. Not everybody's like Benjamin Franklin. Not everybody's like our friend Jack Carr that can like do big, cool things in life. But some of those guys, who's a good one? George Mason, for example, one of the founders. People don't know his name, but go read about old George. These people dedicated their life, and they were shopkeepers. They were frickin'... they made candles, right? They were normal people, but were like, hey, this idea of the fucking king trying to tax us to death, trying to do horrible things to us, I don't like it, and I want to roll the dice and see what we can get out of it. And that's pretty powerful. So did they set us up for failure? We've had this freedom longer than I think that they thought it would exist.
Yeah, I agree.
I think so, and I think it's always on a precipice. What was that movie with Sean Connery where somebody came to get him and they're like, the empire's in peril, and he goes, the fucking empire's always in peril, right? Some shit.
Probably The Rock.
So it was something where they needed him because he was like the stud.
Yeah.
But like it is always in danger. Every great Reagan talked about it, right? Like you have to do the work. Kennedy talked about it. Everybody that ever looks at this problem realizes it comes down to the individual. And when I was involved in politics, I would frame this question: what kind of community do you want, and what are you willing to have or do to have it, rather? And for most people, I want to look like the guy on the Men's Health catalog, but I don't want to do any of that shit. You want to go get a beer? So they're in there. So there's why you can't see your dick when you piss, because you chose the path of least resistance. You chose to get in the current and let it push you versus the harder path, the road less traveled, etc. And I do think it requires leadership, though. You having this podcast, sharing good thoughts, people that are writing or speaking on topics. There's young people doing stuff. I think it requires series of people to be able to maybe steer people's thinking. Guys like Emerson or writers of that time. Think about how crazy it is that now in 2022, thinking back just like 120, 130, 150 years, 100 years, those men were leaving the city and going to Yosemite or out this way and sitting in parks and just like looking around, because by then cities were getting too big for men's brains. And they wrote about the need to reconnect to nature, to reconnect with self. Nothing's new, right? But it is, because they didn't have all this shit. So we have it easier and easier and easier, and we want more and more and more. I think we need less and less and less.
I tend to agree. I think the power of subtraction is huge. I think people's lives would be, for the most part, drastically improved if they started carving away things that are positively benefiting them.
Mm-hmm.
And to speak to the lens looking backwards, right? Because you certainly can, and I think should. I'll use slavery again as an example. Fucking should be judged super harshly.
What I mean by that is what we know. We talked about medicine for a minute. I forget the doctor's name. You guys watching Google, look him up. But for all of time, we thought the human heart, we just created blood and the heart pumped it out to our extremities. And one of the theories was it just dissipated through our fingertips into the ether. And this dude, I think it was like 1600, started chopping people up, corpses, paying for cadavers, and figured out, he's like, hey guys, I think like this thing, like the stuff kind of goes in a
closed
circle. And they literally, the science was that your body, I think they thought your liver created the blood, and that every day you're making hundreds of gallons of blood because they knew how much was in a person. And so they figured if, each pump's moving this much, they figured that you were just producing hundreds of gallons of blood. So we can look back and be like, what idiots, what morons, what dumbasses, because we all know the heart pumps.
Or you could go, thank God that guy was willing to do those experiments because then we could move forward. That's what I was going to say. The baby with the bathwater and fuck this country because of the founders and the things that they did. Let's fast forward 100 years.
Okay.
And let's look back at your and I's life. I'll speak
It's going to be awesome.
I'll speak for myself. I'm a very flawed person. And I have no doubt.
I've got a list of stuff I was going to share.
Of course, it'd be long and distinguished. But I bet you 100 years after I'm dead, people would look back and go, what a fucking moron. Why did he do this, 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 and this? Or why was society set up in that way? And why did he choose to integrate that way? And I hope that they're saying that I'm an idiot because somewhere between when I passed and that 100 years where they're judging me, somebody learned from those mistakes.
Something got better.
And they may. Yeah. So, yeah, fine. I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater because I believe in the principles that this country was founded on. I don't think it's based on perfection. And by looking into the rearview mirror, we can hopefully not repeat the mistakes that those people did. I don't know. And I don't know how that necessarily ties into the comments that I heard about people like, fuck this country. But it's like,
what's the flip side? So you got slavery. You've got maybe some wars we shouldn't have had. You've got whatever all the problems are. Put them in this pile over here. But then what's the flip side? All the science, the medicine, the amazing things that we've crafted, the assembly line, right? That came from America. And then how about the generosity that we've given? Not all the other major countries in the world combined added together their contributions to charity, to helping in war, to helping in famine, don't equal 1/10 of what we've. And it's we the people's money, our backs, our food, etc. That we're our sons and daughters' blood that we're giving out. Can you not look at that and think about it? Because it's
a tough look in the mirror, though. I can understand. I don't necessarily agree with people not wanting to look in the mirror. It's a tough look. It's easier again to just write something out in an emotional state. I do agree with you that when emotions get involved, I actually talk about this when it comes to leadership and decision making. I'm not aware of an actual positive benefit of any emotion on your decision-making process. It doesn't matter how excited.
Love. I got to tell you how I feel.
I mean, I'd have to put some more time thinking to that one. But let's go with excitement or fear or everything in between.
Anger,
those. Anything between those. None of those make your decision-making any better because how you feel about something doesn't actually change the outcome. But if you let emotions override your decision-making process and they become that primal factor in what you decide what you're going to do, I think the trap door in the bottom of it is almost endless. So it has a huge negative possibility, but almost no positive ability. Mm-hmm. And it's just so easy, though, to just hammer shit out on your fingers, right? And just you see something, it upsets you, you viscerally. Some of the commentary on social media is unbelievable. I would love to do a TV show where you find two people that are going at it on the internet, fuck you and fuck your mother, and you lock them in an elevator for like 4 hours, and they
You
have
get a-
to
you get
and
a
they have to
pickaxe.
read to each other first. First, they read to each other what they had wrote, but they have to do it face to face, and it's like, we'll just say it's two gentlemen. It's like, gentlemen, and now you really get to work out your issues. Mm-hmm. I think it might
Toss a bucket of weapons in there and close the door. I had a guy message me the other day, never met him, some politically heated comment section thing on our Instagram channel. And he screenshotted me a bunch of emails to his wife's work email address. So some private guy, private page guy on Instagram and him are getting in this discussion. The guy's an attorney from what I could gather, but it's like private, but you can, in any case, his fucking threats of him going, the wife owned a photography business. And so it said like, you know, dear Mrs. Photography Lady, I can't wait to come to your office. I hope your kids are there. It's going to be a good time. Your husband should learn to keep his fucking mouth shut kind of stuff. So this guy sent it to me. I'm like, well, dude, I would immediately call the police in your town, not emergency. He's like, we couldn't prove it was this person because he goes, well, it's got to be that guy. I'm like, well, you don't know that. It could be a million people. So you can't just accuse it because you can't tie them together. But like, that shit's crazy. Some stranger that you're meeting online. And I read the comments. It was nothing crazy. It was two men bickering. And I just thought to myself, like, wow, some guy's that angry that he went and found this person's wife's website, probably got the contact page, and then typed a series of emails. I mean, like, that's a disturbed motherfucker. And to your point.
Or a detached motherfucker.
Right.
Or both. Right, that would be the most dangerous combination. Would be disturbed and detached.
Mm-hmm.
But this detachment from the consequence of getting punched directly in the mouth hole has really rounded the edges on some people's behavior. I don't know. It's I try. My rule on the internet is I try not to say anything that I wouldn't say direct. Like the elevator example is one that I often use. That's my sniff test for. Should I actually say this to somebody? If we were locked in an elevator together, would I say that to somebody? If the answer is no, maybe don't type it out on your phone.
In our training, I always start like this. What's our goal? Why are we here? Okay, we all go around the room, we talk. Andy, why are you here? I want to get better at shooting a gun. Why? Because I want to shoot faster. Why? And ultimately, it comes down to how do we quantify what better is, how far, how fast, how big a target. But why? Because you want to protect yourself. Why? Because you like being alive. Why? Because living's fucking cool and you don't want to be dead and you want to do it as long as possible. And like, it's hard to like get to that for some reason. I want to be alive. I love my kids. I want to be alive as long as possible. So I want some skills to help make that happen. Okay, let's not do anything unnecessary that would fuck that up. Like follow a guy into a parking lot. I'm out in Texas doing a class. Ice storm. Green Beret buddy of mine owns a range down there.
Oh, the snowpocalypse of Texas?
We're driving. This guy can't drive in the snow. I can drive in the snow. This person, nobody that I know.
You live in Illinois, so you should be able to drive in the snow.
So it's pretty shitty, but not bad. I'm in my truck. I was not doing I didn't speed. I wasn't going over the speed limit. This guy's driving like 8 miles an hour, and I got like a 15-mile drive into town. I pass him. Not anything irate, but he's pissed. Now all of a sudden he's going my same speed trying to get on my bumper. So I'm like, in the rearview mirror, I'm like, this guy's clearly angry. So we get into town. I waited till I got into town. My nephew's with me. I'm like, I don't know what's about to go down, but I ain't gonna have this guy follow us back to the rental house that we're in. And I contemplated calling 911. I just quick whipped into a parking lot, and he whipped right next to me, got out, and was coming at me. And I saw him. This was like a fighting age man ready to go, and he was like ready. And I'm thinking, how dumb. Like, I've got a pistol on me. He's open, exposed. I see his hands. Like, I just thought, how dumb. And I looked at him, and his face I had seen. I go, hey, man, do you know Jeff? And he's like, you know Jeff? And I'm like, yeah, we're training out at the range. He's like, oh, have a good day. Spun. He didn't realize that I knew he was coming from this property, this private property, and I saw this guy one time before. Yeah. And he was probably really embarrassed. So I called the owner up. I'm like, hey, man, this just happened. I don't think I did anything wrong. I just want you to know. So if this guy calls you, like, I don't want any weirdness. We're all friends. He's like, oh, yeah, fuck that guy. He loses his shit all the time. I'm like, dude, he literally, over what I deemed to be nothing, he didn't like that he got passed.
Yeah.
And wanted to win. And then I find out
It's a
like,
dangerous check to start writing.
yeah. And I mean, of course I would have drove away before I
course.
pulled a gun out. But I just thought, man, that's like, you're that angry. So my point, what's my goal? I want to live a long, full life. All right. So now should I eat this thing? Yeah, once in a while, like we had some delicious food last night that maybe wasn't.
And cannolis.
Yeah. Those were great.
Can I tell you a secret?
Yeah.
This is the first cannoli I ever had.
They were delicious. I got
have
them right
I have
down
a
there.
data point of 1. It was fucking good.
I got them right over at, I'll show you where the place is.
That's the best cannoli I've ever had.
It was nice.
And that's the only one.
They were good.
So I'm actually not going to have another one.
Never, just
Because that'll always be the best.
got it. But if we start to analyze, like, okay, what's my goal? Live a long, full life. Blood pressure should stay at a good pace. I shouldn't waste my time arguing with people on the internet, especially I don't know. So should I engage in this? No, this doesn't support the goal of living a long, full life. Should I fucking lay on the couch all Saturday, or should I go for a walk in the woods with the kids? I should go for a walk in the woods with the kids. I mean, that's just like super basic shit. What's important now? You ever read Coach Lou Holtz talked about that WIN, the acronym WIN?
No.
Coach Lou Holtz, Notre Dame football coach. Many people have claimed this was theirs, but Lou's the one I think said it first many years ago. And like business people, martial artists, warriors, they use it. WIN. What's important now? And like in the moment, you can use this phrase in your head like, my gun went empty. What's important now? Get to cover. What's important now? Strip the empty mag. What's important now? Get a new one in. And then like you get those skills to the point of guns empty. What's important now? Cover, and all this stuff just becomes one movement, right? Like we need systems in our life. We don't think we do. And so this decision to argue with idiots on the internet, it's purely a choice to win. You know this. I got to
Put the rope down.
Yeah, I got to show you that I'm a fucking man.
Best advice I was ever given when it came to arguing with people, and I forget who I heard it from, but it was described to me as a tug of war.
Mm-hmm.
2 of you are holding onto a rope and tugging as hard as you can. Just fucking let go of the rope, man.
I don't got it.
Just let go of the rope.
You asked me when we started, how do I deal with the bullshit? I used to get heated 7, 8, 10 years ago looking at some of the comments. From time to time, something will cause me like a little, like what the fuck? But
the internet is full of some smart people too, and you're like, ooh, that one stings deep.
But I remind myself, why are you doing this? Because I don't have to. Nobody's making me do it. I don't have to. I get messages from people, one that is common. Hey, man, been part of your training programs with me and guys like Paul and my friend Z and the D-Day guys. I lost 55 pounds since I saw you 7 months ago. Hey, that's freaking cool. That's why I do this. Or, hey, I'm working with a guy on the East Coast that's running for Congress that I would not know otherwise, but he doesn't know how to raise money. I do. I'm going to help him raise some money. Like, shit like that. I fixate on that and not the dumb stuff. So
easier said than done.
Totally, but it's a choice, right?
Yeah.
I think it is easy if we like pick a goal. I just challenged people last week after this shooting. We talked about it. People got angry, but I don't have all the answers. You don't have all the answers. There's no magic switch that we can push a button and say, make everybody nice, make guns go away. Guns are never going away. I mean, sans some type of new world order where like
it fails the practical and reasonable approach. I don't even know the mechanism that would be, and that's where Canadians and Australians will reach out. I'm like, listen, I love both countries. In '96, the total population of Australia was probably under 20 million at that point. The number of guns in circulation, it's different. There's more guns in circulation in the U.S. than there are actual people alive.
God bless America.
There you go. There's a bumper sticker for you. I'm gonna make one that says the fucking 8th Amendment. I'm gonna put it next to my Punisher skull, which I don't have, and I'm not doing either of those things, people. I'm joking. For those of you who can't hear the sarcasm, I don't know. Reasonable and practical. When people start talking about what we can do, if it doesn't meet both of those criteria, I think you're spewing hot air.
I think we definitely need to work on educating people. We've all heard the phrase from Spider-Man with great power comes great responsibility. I don't like to be corny about it, but that's a fact. We need to understand that if we're going to have this right, the difference between free speech and the Second Amendment is I can say, fuck you, Andy Stumpf, I hate you, I want to murder you, or I could draw this pistol that's on me and literally shoot you. So there's like a huge difference in the amount of injury and causation that can come about from the tool. We need to grasp that. I think people are too flippant about it. Not everybody. There's tons of people that are not, but there are many that don't appreciate that. And then we don't appreciate that just because it's codified on paper doesn't mean it can't change. So maybe just understanding that, because people hold on to, guy unfollowed me because I said rights do have limits in the sense of criminal law defines where rights end. Yeah. Right? Criminal laws, we have it because we say, okay, you can build a fence until you build it into your neighbor's yard. You can milk a goat and do stuff with it, but you can't fuck it and,
Is that really a law?
I don't know. I was trying to come up with something good. And I lost it. So you get my point.
I do. And I couldn't agree with you more on the educational perspective, and I also want to keep us out of hot water with our significant others.
Okay.
So we have to be respectful of time, because I knew we were going to have a slightly compressed window. You guys leave tomorrow. You live in the educational world. So let's close with, talk to me a little bit about Carry Trainer and then what you do at the S12 events.
Sure. Cool. Firearms instructor. There's a million people that teach people firearms. What we try to do a little bit different is immerse people in a short amount of time, day, 3-day, 5-day course, and through super structured training that has removed all waste and created as many efficiencies as possible, directed to the outcome of helping people be better at winning in violence, winning in life. That's kind of the concept there. That S12 event is a compilation of high level of firearm skills, combatives. Paul Sharp, Z Durham, and some other guys run the combatives program there. And then technical combat casualty care, and it's full on the fake blood and all that business, pyro, smoke, bangers, all that good stuff. And, somebody like you, whatever, but to the average citizen.
No, I love that stuff.
But you know what I'm saying? Like, you've been exposed to it.
Yeah.
Somebody that's, a lot of these people work in businesses, schools, churches, and to be able to take the person, if you've not seen something in training and the first time you see it's in real life, that's terrible. So what we're trying to do is expose people as many times as possible to good repetitions, build a good mindset. That S12 event, we feed you, we house you. I've got a corporate chef that comes out. You had Jeff Smith on.
Yes.
So Jeff, Colorado Craft Beef. We eat delicious beef through the event. Yeah, it's a great time. We do that in Nashville. It's a private 450-acre retreat twice a year. Next one's in October.
Where does the name S12 come from?
So initially we had 12 students go through this program with 12 instructors. And there was a specific reason for it at the time. But S stands for selective. Not like Navy SEAL selection, but selective. We're selective of things, our choices, our thoughts, our deeds. And there's a whole series of those things that go together. Kind of a mindset thing. No, it's not bullshit. It's not fluff. We're not saying like, you can come to this and be somebody. It's kind of like the people we were with this weekend. You can surround yourself with people that seek to walk a higher path and not take the easy path. They're not the people that are just going to step out into the current and let it take them. We're not training to be badasses. We're training to live through violence, overcome if necessary, have fun, make good choices. And, like Paul was there at the last one, we're working 12-hour days. It's hot, 90-plus degrees, and we brought the mats from Dan's gym, my coach here, Dan Hart, and we rolled for an hour or two every night after 12-plus hour days. We were 16, 18-hour days for us, and we were laughing and having a great time.
Until Paul elbowed you directly in the fucking nose, which there's a great video of.
Did you see the one I posted, though, where I continued to choke him?
No.
Oh, yeah. They didn't share that one.
Paul
2.0.
I just saw that. It's like, whack, and you would, that classic face of like, oh.
Oh, it was brutal. It was
right
brutal.
on the button.
It was brutal. It sucked. Yeah, it was like right there, blood. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. You know what sucks about getting hit in the nose is eventually it's like you'll turn your head too fast. Your fucking nose just starts bleeding.
Oh, I was bleeding yesterday. Somebody touched me.
Yeah, it's you just like a butterfly touches your nose and it's like profusely bleeding.
Yeah, it's brutal.
Yeah, it is brutal. Where can people find you on the socials?
Carry Trainer, CarryTrainer. I also own a Gunfighter Gun Oil, so you might see that there, but we're pretty easy. YouTube, Instagram. We put up, most of our stuff is pretty driven to educate. There might be something funny once in a while. I try to be humorous, but more of it is meant to provide something thought-provoking. I think you need to read the stuff if you're going to view it, not just view it. And
yeah. Speaking of viewing it, where do you find a lot of the videos that you post of incidents occurring with firearms?
A lot of people send me stuff. A lot of them are police officers because, hey, I don't want somebody to see this and think some bullshit. And I don't just take it and share it. You know, I'll go read and try to figure out what's going on. And I hate this trend of this is horrible and it's violent and people are going to want to watch it, so I'm going to share this because 100,000 people are going to watch it. I don't do that.
I do, but it usually involves mountain bikes.
That's a little different, right? That's a little different.
Those are pleasure activities that turned terribly, terribly wrong.
That's a little different. Yeah. I don't want to just sell somebody's calamity and horrific.
Some of the videos that it's gnarly, some of the things that have been captured on video in this day and age.
Which you'd think with all that exposure to that, we would maybe have a greater understanding of the ramifications of this stuff, but I think it's desensitized us. And, you know, real quick comment about all of these shootings that we keep seeing. I think part of it is now we've got this magnifying glass and spotlight on shooting, so anytime something's happening, we
have a magnifying glass on some types of shootings.
Yeah, sure.
Go and look at, as an example, the number of people who are shot in 30 days in Chicago.
Oh, it's horrible.
Comparatively to, and again, I don't want to take anything. I can't even, I put myself in the position of the parents at that school. Holy fuck, right?
Horrible.
The worst days of your life. And then you just have to continue living your life with that knowledge of what happened to your kid. I'm not trying to take anything away from that. I wonder, though, if the shootings that occur on the daily in Chicago got the same level of press and attention, if something would be done about that as well, because it trumps probably by an order of magnitude, if not multiples, what happens generally in those much more public shootings. And and again, I'm not putting it in any ways like this one is not as bad as that one. They're all fucking terrible.
Yeah.
But we are selective in what we choose to pay attention to.
I'm used to seeing this one. I can understand it because I see it. That I can't relate to. It's horrible. My kids go to a school or a church or whatever. I can't imagine that happening. I don't live in that other place, so I can just ignore it. And what's the goal? That's the same question. I look at that. What's our goal? Well, my goal is to dive into all this sensational bullshit and be continuing the narrative at the barbershop or the water cooler and not moving the ball, not changing anything. Could I say one thing before? I know you're about to quit.
No, please go ahead.
So we're not
about to quit. I'm trying to keep us from getting in trouble.
I don't give a shit.
Sharon,
I love you, Sharon. I love you very much. No, so people, we've been talking about this a lot. I meant to talk about it. I'm not trying to make it about I want to say one more thing, but I've thought about this in depth. And not that I started to say a minute ago, we don't have the answers. We can't push a button and make shit change. What if, and I challenged people that were part of a video we did to try this. Just a fucking week. Do the right thing. Do the right fucking thing. Whatever it is, do the right fucking thing. Pick a bottle cap up in the parking lot. Oh, it's dirty. I don't want to touch it. Fucking pick it up. Throw it in the garbage. Put the shopping cart away for the old lady. Hold the fucking door. When your kid says read a book, stay the fuck up and read the book. The right thing is always in flux, though, right? So the right thing might be go knock on doors for the dude that's running for city council next week and he's not close to winning and you got to go burn out 10 hours. But just try for 1 week. But you got to really fucking try. And I think if people, I say it, it's turned into, for the last year or so in my head, like a almost annoying voice, except now I like it because I'll find myself being a bitch or being just ready to do the wrong thing, and I'll tell myself, do the right thing, cocksucker. Fucking do it. Like, because you tell people to,
Yeah.
and like, what if we societally, what if 2% of us, because only 56 fucking guys signed the Declaration of Independence. I go back to that just because 1%, if just 1% focused on that, what could we do? That's hundreds of thousands of people, right?
Yeah, it's that
Millions.
A drop in a huge body of water and it ripples out. Or
Sure.
what else? The butterfly effect.
All that stuff. All
Yeah.
that stuff.
I frame that often in, you always have a choice between something that's easy and something that's hard. More often than not, taking the hard choice at doing the hard thing is going to net you the result that you're actually looking for, whereas taking the easy choice, it's people make a lot of they love the speech from McCraven, make your bed in the morning. It's like, it's not actually about making the bed, even though, yes, he is saying make your bed. It's more about start your day with a disciplined act and probably something you don't want to do. Mm-hmm. So make the hard choice. And then when you get up after that, maybe you could be on a roll. You could go out and choose between having a bowl of Honey Nut Cheerios versus something that's a little bit more balanced and a macronutrient. Like, make the hard decision.
Don't even buy the fucking shitty cereal.
Well, there you go. That makes it easier. But so, or, the one that I struggle with my kids, when the toilet paper roll becomes empty,
that's the biggest pet peeve of my own.
Take it off the goddamn roller, throw it in the garbage, because my kids just do this with the other roll. They put it on top of it. I'm just like, you son of a...
I've seen it.
I'm like, why don't you do that? Oh, it's just easier, Dad. I'm like, I'm just like, yeah.
I'm just joking. I don't want to belt kids. That was a joke.
Do the hard thing. Or do the right thing.
Because sometimes it's not even hard.
Yeah.
But it becomes, we talk about mindset so much in this whole sphere of people. Homeless people have a mindset. Drug addicts have a mindset. Murderers have a mindset. So mindset doesn't mean good. Craft a fucking mindset and then surround yourself with people, or be the leader in your community, in your town, in your church, in your job that does it. And then all of a sudden somebody's going to be like, hey, I kind of like what that Bob guy's got going on. Bob's kind of like got a good attitude. I feel good when I'm around Bob. I don't want to hang around John. That guy's an asshole. Bob makes me feel nice. Bob's got a fucking fence that's painted. Bob's got a car that's paid off. Of course, I'm just making shit up. But
Bob's got a goat that he fucks.
Yes.
To go back to one of your previous analogies.
Beget success, right?
It's momentum. It builds momentum.
Yeah. And that is what the firestorm that our founders created, was them fanning the fucking shit, and then we got like, fuck, it's kind of still there's little embers left. There's little fucking embers. That's it. And it requires somebody to get on their hands and knees and blow. Really. There was a dick joke in there.
Best ending ever. Thank you, Mickey.